Peace and welcome to Not Church. Welcome, old friends and new friends. No doctrine, no dogma, no Bravo Sierra. Deconstruction, mysticism, the Bible through the lens of near-death experience, symbols, myth, metaphor, and simile. Let those who have eyes to see, see, said Jesus, and those who have ears to hear, hear. The light is inside you, among you, between us, within us, as we gather. I'm in a quandary this week, my friends. I worked hard on what I wanted to say, but today I have something else to say. And sometimes when I was a pastor in a pulpit, I would cast aside the work I had created for the day to speak on something where my heart has been moved to speak on. I'm going to have to change the title and all the inserts and all the tags, because the question before me today is peace and just war. How do we live with peace inside ourselves, living in connection to the holy divine, in a world where a dictator can dictate the overthrow of an innocent nation, minding their own business, and kill children and adults for the sake of power? There is this saying in the Bible, woe to the one who says peace, peace, when there is no peace. There is no peace now. And there is a difference between this peace here and the peace in the world. Jesus was always talking about the peace which surpasses understanding. That's the peace that lives inside us, that we carve and create space for in our silent practice. It is the truth and the living divine. It's the crystal river of life. It's the crystal river of all life. All life. And as we've covered over the past few weeks, we are original goodness. We are the watered leaves on the tree of life. We have this inside us, and we are connected to each other through it. Every leaf watered by the crystal river. Every human, all the Ukrainians, and us, and the whole world. We watch in horror as this unfolds before us, and we are handcuffed under threat of nuclear attack. The longer they hold out, the better the chance for world peace. The end of one aggressive dictator. If ever there was a just war in the history of the terrible wars of humanity which predate Adam and Eve, they go back to our tribal natures. If ever there was a just war, it's this one. We pray for these people. We support these people. We condemn this action. This creation story that we will talk about this morning, I think, shows us who we are spiritually, but we have to live in the world. And when we live in the world as mystics, we can live with this peace within us and still have a heart for the people. A heart for the people, to feel their pain. Oh, you people who are empathetic, you empaths of the world. Feel this and stand with them in your hearts. Give them the courage of the light to face this darkness come down from the north into their land. These are the places where mysticism and practicality meet face to face. War is terrible, horrible. The worst. But Ukrainians, they fight for themselves against an aggressor and have to stand against the bully. That's what mystics actually do. We stand against those who oppress and repress. It comes with empathy. It comes from the heart inside of you. It comes when you have a heart for the people. And that comes directly from this divine connection that reaches into us and dwells in us and lives inside us and spreads between us. This energetic divine gives us an understanding that the other is me and I am them. Sometimes we have to fight. I stand on the side of the Ukrainians from the safety of my studio. And I pray for the world to have peace, but justice also. I pray for the Ukrainians. I wish it were another way. I wish we could be hammering our spears and swords into pruning hooks and plows. But these days now, the world is forced to face potential world war. And that's what's shackled us. I pray for peace in myself and among us. I pray for peace, but I pray for justice. I pray for the justice and the righteousness of the Ukrainian people to know that the world is behind them and against aggression and oppression and repression. The world is too small now for this. It's been too small for centuries. No more dictators, no more authoritarians, no more plutocrats, no more oligarchy. I love this new president of the Ukraine, this hero, grandson, survivor of death by the Nazis, his family. Now he stands with his people, giving them hope. The least we can do is hope along with them. And if there is power in prayer in the world, then our hope alone will help pull down this dictator. There's no more room for this. The threat is too high. We are all at risk. May the leaders of the world protect the nations from world war. May the people of the world understand the just behavior of the Ukrainians and their self-defense and give them the weapons they need. That may surprise you, coming from me, Mr. Peace, Peace, But I'm also Mr. Don't like the bullies. Bullies and narcissists ruin it for everyone. And the only way is to defend yourself. I pray for the defense of the Ukrainians. I pray for their victory. I pray for their resilience, for their strength, for their courage, for the bravery of common people gone to arms. War is terrible and terrifying, and I can't imagine having to shoot another human. But God help them as they defend themselves, and give them strength and resolve and hope. Ukraine, the world is with you. All right, my friends. Maybe I can return now to what I had planned. I don't know. But I'd like to meditate a little with you if we could. 3 ohms. Some breaths. And today, am a peaceful heart of hope and resilience, courage and strength at the Ukrainians as they fight justly in self-defense. When we bring the peace to ourselves, we bring it to the world and bring more light into the world. That's what we do. So I have to ask my friends in the chat, should I talk about what I was going to talk about? End here? Should I talk about what I was going to talk about or end here? What do you think? Hey, Catherine, I guess there's misinformation in the stream. If you would be so kind as to remove some. There's a note from Judith. All right. Go through to the chats. Talk about creation story, not sure. All right. We'll stay to the subject then. Peace and namaste, my friends. Peace and namaste. Over the past few weeks, we've covered 4 creation stories. Genesis 1, 3 creation stories. Genesis 1, Revelation 22, and the prologue of John. We return now to Genesis 2, the second creation story, which was authored long before Genesis 1. Now remember that there are 2 authors in Genesis, the first one in Genesis 1 and the other in Genesis 2. And the first one brings us original goodness. The first Genesis story was written after the second one was written and inserted before it to remind us of our goodness. I insert before that the Revelation 22, which brings the all life, the river of crystal light and love and light and goodness that flows into all things. I put that in front of Genesis 1. So today it's the Eden myth, creation, and you. I'm Peter Panagore, a seeker, ex-clergy. I could never have said what I just said this morning from a pulpit. And channeler of light, or at least I try to be. I try to bring Shaktipat among us and between us, because this thing about Shaktipat, this passing of the peace between us, it's between us. It's because it's in us. And when we're together and we share it together, its radiance grows in us and around us. And I'd like to spread some of that around the world today. The word I hear inside myself all the time is surrender. Surrender myself to this inner peace that gives strength in the world. Today, the Eden creation myth and you. Now remember what we covered in Revelation 22, the crystal river of all life that flows from under the throne of the beloved, pouring down the main street of the city of light, feeding the 2-trunked tree of life, flowing up into the tree, into you, into me. We are the little leaves of the tree of life. Remember also your original goodness, and even those in the Ukraine and in Russia and in Belarus, all have original goodness. Even the bully has original goodness way down deep inside. In Genesis 1, in the creation myth, the divine creator is transcendent, above, cosmic, invisible, and universal. In Genesis 2, and the divine is immanent, present, visible, and near. Paradox, both of these things, transcendent and immanent. Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 together point to the dual nature of the oneness of being as we experience it here. Transcendent and immanence simultaneous, inside us and above us, greater than us as human beings, but with its totality inside of us. Its goodness and greatness live here. Paradox and visible and the invisible. The circle whose circumference is nowhere and whose center is everywhere. You have heard that saying. Panentheism. The divine presence smeared through everything there is, hidden within it, immanent in you personally right now. The light within your original goodness, in the middle of you, comes from the transcendent self above, beyond human life, indwelling. We live in this paradox of duality, and we are 2 things, visible and incarnate, invisible and higher self. both at the same time. All of this is metaphor, don't forget. Imminently in the middle of us, in the middle of you, is your transcendental goodness, your original self. And Genesis 2 is literally the beginning of the patriarchy. The Elohim, the name, the Adonai, the beloved that we heard of in the plural, them in Genesis 1, in Genesis 2 gets changed to male and singular. It's the same word, but its maleness comes forward and its singularity comes forward. And this begins the oppression of one above the other. But in the beginning, the singular is first, the singular oneness of being. Chapter 1, them and it simultaneously. I avoid the gender he and she when I can. I call them them and it, the nameless one, is also experienced by many of us. Many of us have experienced the divine as them, come to us as a cadre of angels, of beings of light, come to us in a multiplicity of ways, each addressing us as we need. They come to us as we need them to show themselves. This transcendent and immanent divine being is one and many at the same time. We covered the transcendent creator and the original goodness and original blessing in that video, and maybe you want to check it out. It's in the past, but it's in the link below. You can see what I'm talking about with the creation of our original goodness and our original blessing. But in Genesis 2, that was Genesis 1. In Genesis 2, we are mud and spirit. We show our duality. We are body inhabited, consciousness living in material form. Immanent creator, the one that's here, took mud, metaphorical mud, but actual matter, and molded life over eons and eons, and blew spirit into human being, into chickadees, into trees. Inside of all things. Have you looked at the universe at night? In a starlit place? All of creation, over billions of years, being blown into being right now. The breath inside us, inspirited, making us live in the here and now. We are above and we are below. We are mud and we are spirit. We are mostly divine. All divine, really, once we leave our bodies. And this is blown away by death into dust. This blowing blows the frequency of our own self into being. You heard me talk about word last week in John. The frequency of the sound of my name being spoken, my soul name being spoken into a frequency that creates me into a human being, creates me first, before that, into a soul. This frequency, this word spoken is now. This blowing breath is now. The word, the blowing, just metaphors for the unspeakable. This frequency, spoken you, the you that is the frequency, you are attuned to the divine. And when we get our frequencies attuned to each other in this crystal river, this river of life that wets us all like little leaves hanging on that tree among the septillions of the millions and billions of trees, all of us together, we are all this light, this goodness inside ourselves as we live in this mud form. The breath is here and now. And whenever we silence ourselves, we touch it. This living, divine river that flows out of Eden, that flows underneath the divine throne into Eden, mythology, mythological symbol, Eden, a heaven above. The crystal river flows into Eden and creates it through the tree of life, and the river flows out of eastern Eden, creating an oasis of life for this one human and all these animals. Don't forget, an animal, a human is an animal. This oasis of Eden, this heaven, is in a wilderness in this myth. It's surrounded by unlivable space for 1,000 miles of desert in the mind of the writer. And Eden is the perfect garden place for this single living Adam, this one human creature, all genders, all sexes, made of mud and consciousness. And everything that is needed to live for this creature is there in Eden. And it's a good living, we're told. It's a good living. Eden is a great place because there's good gold there, the author tells us. There's fragrant resin for making perfume, the author tells us. There's precious onyx to carve statues, make bowls and spoons, and comfortable cups. All of these things make Eden good in the mind of the writer. Eden has everything everyone ever wanted and more than you can imagine. It is paradise. The message here is extravagant, abundant richness in all matters. Heaven above, abundance and richness, way above earth. It's also a well-watered land with several rivers, and there's lots to eat. But the Adonai, the Elohim, they in this, he and him, but they, says, I know this. I made this place. Everything in it is good, but there's this one tree that grows here, and there's another tree that grows here, and both are needed for the ecosystem to function. Don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Because the day you eat of this particular tree, you're going to depart your higher self and your higher self and this oneness of being, and enter into a place of suffering, a place of the end of you as you know yourself. You're going to go down a level. You're going to become you're going to live in a world of suffering. That's what happens when you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But there's also an easy out. We know this to be true because the great threat here is that you're going to die, the divine says to Adam. You learn about good and evil. You eat of this tree. Once you know this, you're going to die. But here's the thing. So many of us have died and gone home. So that's sort of like We know that this is true because thousands of us have been there, millions of us. So I'm not sure why that threat's in the Bible, but there it is, as if death is this terrible thing. Creator cuts the one creature in two, and gives us a physical dual nature. And the one becomes two. And the opposite's true, of course. When the two become one, then you can have this spiritual ecstasy, this rising above outside of yourself. That's a theme here. The two and the one. The two and the one. The life flowing out of heaven through Eden. The richness of the abundance. and the knowledge of suffering. That's what the whole thing talks about. I think I'm going to end here, everybody. I'll take a look at the chat. I think I'm going to end here today, everybody. I'm not feeling talking about this today. I'll pick it up again next week a little bit. I'll finish up by saying this, and then we'll go to the chat. And remember Mystic Tea Salon at the end, top of the next hour. I'm skipping up in my teleprompter to get to the end here. What's wrong with knowledge? Nothing wrong with knowledge. Yeah, I'm having a hard time today. I guess I'm too empathetic, eh? Let's spend a moment in remembrance. I want to thank everybody for being here right now. And to the beloved, for your weekly gifts and your encouragement. They really do keep me going, especially in a week like this. I couldn't do it without you. You know, I have kept this free and I've not erected paywalls on purpose because the light belongs to everyone. And all my life I've been giving it away just as instructed by the ineffable voice who told me so. Thanks for using Patreon and PayPal and using your card. I'm also available by counseling for counseling and conversation at peterpanagore.love. Don't forget at the top of the next hour, Mystic Tea Salon, where humility and kindness rule. Thanks for spending your time with me. Please like and subscribe. Thank you all for the super chats this morning. I appreciate it. Thanks, Connie, Chad, and Laurie. May peace prevail on earth. No matter what I'm feeling, these tiny little feelings of mine, they don't compare anything to what's going on over there. The eyes of the world are on Ukraine. And our hearts are with you too over there, everybody. I want you to know we believe in you. We send you our hope. We send you our strength. All right, I'll take a look at this chat over here for a minute. And yeah, life is pain for sure. That's where I was going with the Genesis 2 part today. I'm sorry, but I can't help myself but be thinking of these people. All right, so I'll see you at the top of the hour, eh? Theophane Boyd's story is good. Which story is that, Tim? Thank you, Logan. Prayers for the world. Thanks, PL. Love thy enemy is so hard. But how else do we raise the vibration? We still love our enemy. We love our enemy. That's what we do in our prayer life. We aim ourselves at the divine that gives us the strength to love those who are our enemies. But we don't have to put up with their violence. Think of it as an abuser. You don't have to put up with an abuser. You leave when you can and you defend yourself when you must. I still love them, though. I've known plenty of abused people who still love those who abuse them. And as long as they get out and defend themselves, and defend themselves and protect themselves and remove themselves from the situation, they can keep right on loving them, feeling empathy for them. But don't let your guard down. It's the cost of being human, living in this world. Yes. It's difficult to concentrate and comfort, aware of the suffering of so many. Raisin girl. Yeah, that's definitely what the problem is here. For me, anyway. Rise above the duality and hold the stillness of peace in mind. That's what I've been doing. And as long as I'm in it, it's cool. And the flow never stops. Don't get me wrong. I don't lose this flow. The flow is still there, but my heart aches for the people. Yep. All right, everybody. I'll see you at the top of the hour. Link is below. Peace and love. Thanks for being here. Pray for the people.